Welcome to Shadowlands Ghosts, a place where the lines between reality and fiction blur, and the darkness that lurks within our minds comes to life. I'm your host, Raven Blackwood, and I'll be your guide through the twisted tales that unfold within these Shadowlands. As a lover of the macabre and the unknown, I've always been drawn to the darker corners of the human experience. And it's here, in this realm of shadows, that we'll delve into the stories that will leave you sleeping with the lights on. But for now, let's start with a story that's a little too close to home. You see, I've been noticing strange occurrences in my own life, and I've come to realize that the characters in my latest novel seem to know a little too much about me. It's as if they're watching me, waiting for me to make my next move. And I'm starting to wonder, are they just characters, or is something more sinister at play? Join me as I take you on a journey into the heart of darkness, where the boundaries between reality and fiction are tested, and the horrors that lurk within are waiting to be unleashed. So, if you're ready to step into the shadows and face the terrors that lie within, then subscribe to Shadowlands Ghosts and become a part of our little family of fear enthusiasts. And as you listen to this tale, remember, you're not just hearing a story. You're experiencing it through the eyes of the lead character, a writer who's about to uncover a dark truth that will change their life forever. So, settle in, and let the shadows begin to whisper their secrets in your ear. The world outside my window was still, the sun casting its golden glow over the quiet neighborhood. I sat in my study, surrounded by the familiar comforts of my writing sanctuary, the scent of old books, the soft hum of the computer, and the worn leather chair that had been my faithful companion through countless late nights and early mornings. My latest novel, The Echoes of Blackwood, lay open on my desk, the pages filled with the lives of my characters, each one a reflection of my own imagination and creativity. Or so I thought. Lena, my protagonist, stared back at me from the page, her eyes seeming to hold a depth that went beyond mere words. Her story was one of love, loss, and redemption, set against the backdrop of the decaying town of Ravenswood. But as I read through the lines, I couldn't shake the feeling that she knew more about me than I was comfortable with. The way she navigated the twists and turns of her own narrative seemed almost intuitive, as if she had a deeper understanding of the world beyond the boundaries of the story. I pushed the thought aside, attributing it to my own paranoia and the long hours I'd been putting in. After all, I was the one who had created her, breathed life into her, and set her on her journey. But the feeling lingered, like a shadow in the corner of my mind. As I delved deeper into the world of the Echoes of Blackwood, I began to notice other strange occurrences. Characters would mention places I'd visited, people I'd met, and even quotes I'd spoken in conversation. It was as if they had access to my own memories, my own experiences. At first, I dismissed it as coincidence, the result of my own subconscious weaving its way into the narrative. But the more I wrote, the more I realized that something was off. The characters in my story seemed to be watching me, waiting for me to make my next move. And I couldn't shake the feeling that I was no longer in control. As I sat at my desk, the words on the page began to blur together, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. It was as if the characters in my story were closing in on me, their eyes peering over my shoulder as I typed. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but the sense of unease only grew. I decided to take a break, to clear my head and get some fresh air. But as I stood up and walked to the window, I noticed something strange. The sun, which had been shining brightly just moments before, was now hidden behind a thick veil of clouds. The sky was a deep, foreboding gray, and the air seemed to vibrate with an otherworldly energy. I felt a chill run down my spine as I gazed out at the transformed landscape. It was as if the very world outside my window had changed, shifted to reflect the dark and foreboding atmosphere of my story. I turned back to my desk, my heart racing with a growing sense of unease. The words on the page seemed to leap out at me, the characters' eyes glinting with a malevolent intensity. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare, with no escape from the twisted world I had created. As I sat back down, my hand began to move of its own accord, typing out words that seemed to come from nowhere. The characters in my story were speaking to me, their voices whispering in my ear as I wrote. Lena's eyes are not just eyes. The words flowed onto the page. They are windows to the soul, portals to a world beyond our own. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I read the words. They were not my own, and yet they seemed to come from a place deep within me. I was no longer in control of my story, and I knew it. I tried to stop writing, to tear my hand away from the keyboard, but it was too late. The words kept flowing, a torrent of dark and twisted thoughts that seemed to pour from the very depths of my own mind. As I wrote, the room around me began to darken, the shadows deepening and twisting into grotesque forms. I felt like I was being pulled into the world of my story, sucked down into a vortex of madness and terror. And I knew that I was not alone. The characters in my story were watching me, waiting for me to make my next move. And I knew that if I didn't break free from their grasp, I would be trapped forever in the twisted world I had created. The words on the page seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, drawing me deeper into the heart of the story. I was no longer the writer, but the written, and I knew that I was running out of time. As the darkness closed in around me, I realized that I had to take control back. I had to break free from the twisted world of my story and reclaim my own sanity. But it was too late. The words had already been written, and the darkness had already been unleashed. And I was trapped, forever bound to the twisted world of the echoes of Blackwood. As I stared at the words on the page, I felt the room spinning around me, the darkness closing in like a suffocating shroud. The characters in my story seemed to be whispering in my ear, their voices a maddening chant that threatened to consume me whole. And then I saw it. The truth. The horrifying reality that I had been trying to ignore. The words on the page were not just words. They were a doorway, a portal to a realm of madness and terror. And I had been writing my own ticket to hell. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I was not the writer, I was the written. I was a pawn in a twisted game, a game of cat and mouse with the very characters I had created. As I read the words on the page, I felt my sanity slipping away. The characters were not just characters. They were vessels, conduits for an otherworldly energy that had been awakened by my writing. I saw Lena, her eyes glowing with an ethereal light. I saw her smile, a twisted grin that seemed to grow wider with every passing moment. And I knew that I was doomed. The darkness closed in around me, a living, breathing entity that seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. I felt myself being pulled into the heart of the story, sucked down into a vortex of madness and terror. And then I heard the voices. The whispers in my ear grew louder, a cacophony of terror that threatened to consume me whole. I felt my mind shattering, my grip on reality tenuous at best. I was no longer in control. The characters had taken over, and I was just a pawn in their twisted game. I was trapped in the world of the echoes of Blackwood, forever bound to the darkness that I had unleashed. As the shadows deepened and twisted around me, I knew that I was lost forever. The words on the page had become a reality, a living, breathing entity that would haunt me for eternity. And I knew that I would never be free. The darkness closed in, a suffocating shroud that threatened to consume me whole. I screamed, but my voice was drowned out by the cacophony of terror that filled my mind. And then everything went black. The words on the page seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, drawing me deeper into the heart of the story. I was no longer the writer, but the written, and I knew that I was running out of time. But it was too late. The darkness had already been unleashed, and I was trapped, forever bound to the twisted world of the echoes of Blackwood. In the end, I realized that the true horror was not the monsters or the ghosts, but the darkness within myself. The darkness that I had unleashed upon the world, and the darkness that had consumed me whole. The words on the page had become a reality, a living, breathing entity that would haunt me for eternity. And I knew that I would never be free. As I stared into the abyss of the words on the page, I felt the darkness coalescing into a tangible entity. The characters in my story seemed to be closing in around me, their twisted faces contorted in a macabre dance of horror. The air was thick with the stench of decay and corruption, and I knew that I was the source of it all. Lena's eyes glowed like lanterns in the darkness, her twisted smile a beacon of terror that seemed to draw me deeper into the heart of the story. The whispers in my ear grew louder, a cacophony of terror that threatened to consume me whole. I felt my mind shattering, my grip on reality tenuous at best. And then I saw it. The horror. The thing that I had been trying to ignore. The thing that I had been writing about all along. It was me. I was the monster. I was the darkness. I was the thing that I had been trying to create. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I was not just a pawn in a twisted game. I was the game itself. I was the story. I was the words on the page. And I knew that I was running out of time. The darkness closed in around me, a suffocating shroud that threatened to consume me whole. I screamed, but my voice was drowned out by the cacophony of terror that filled my mind. And then I felt it. The writing. The words on the page. They were crawling under my skin, infecting me with their madness. I tried to run, but my feet were rooted to the spot. I tried to scream, but my voice was silenced by the whispers in my ear. And then I saw the words, the final words, the words that would seal my fate forever. The end. I knew that I was doomed. I knew that I would never be free. The words on the page seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, drawing me deeper into the heart of the story. I was no longer the writer, but the written, and I knew that I was trapped forever. The darkness closed in, a living, breathing entity that seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. I felt myself being pulled into the heart of the story, sucked down into a vortex of madness and terror. And then everything went black. The last thing I saw was the words on the page. The words that had consumed me whole. The end. But it was not the end. It was just the beginning. The beginning of my eternal torment. The beginning of my forever trap in the world of the echoes of Blackwood. and I knew that I would never be free. As I lay trapped in the abyss of my own creation, the words on the page seemed to writhe and twist around me like living serpents. The darkness had consumed me whole, and I was now a part of the very story I had sought to create. The echoes of Blackwood still lingered, a maddening refrain that seemed to sear itself into my very soul. I tried to scream, but my voice was silenced by the crushing weight of my own madness. The words on the page seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, drawing me deeper into the heart of the story. I was no longer the writer, but the written, and I knew that I was trapped forever. The last thing I remembered was the feeling of my mind shattering, my grip on reality tenuous at best. The whispers in my ear had grown loud, a cacophony of terror that threatened to consume me whole. And then everything went black. When I awoke, I was back in my study, the manuscript lying open on my desk. The words on the page seemed to stare back at me, a cold, dead gaze that seemed to bore into my very soul. I knew that I was not the same person anymore. I had been changed by the experience, forever trapped in the world of the echoes of Blackwood. As I looked around the room, I saw that everything was just as I had left it. The books on the shelves seemed to loom over me, their titles twisted and distorted in my mind. The shadows on the walls seemed to move and twist like living things. And the air was thick with the stench of decay and corruption. I knew that I was not alone. The darkness was still with me, a living, breathing entity that seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. I could feel its presence, a cold, dead weight that seemed to press down upon me. And I knew that I would never be free. The words on the page had seen to that. I was trapped forever in the world of the echoes of Blackwood, a prisoner of my own madness. As I sat there, surrounded by the darkness, I knew that I would never be able to escape. The words on the page had consumed me whole, and I was now a part of the very story I had sought to create. And I knew that I would be trapped forever, a prisoner of my own horror. The darkness closed in around me, a suffocating shroud that seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. I felt myself being pulled back into the heart of the story, sucked down into a vortex of madness and terror. And then everything went black. But this time, I knew that I would never wake up. The words on the page had seen to that. I was trapped forever, a prisoner of my own horror. And I knew that I would never be free. The last thing I saw was the manuscript, the words on the page seeming to twist and writhe like living serpents. And I knew that I was doomed. The words on the page had consumed me whole, and I was now a part of the very story I had sought to create. The darkness closed in, a living, breathing entity that seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. And I knew that I was trapped forever, a prisoner of my own madness. The words on the page seemed to whisper a final message in my ear, a cold, dead voice that seemed to sear itself into my very soul. The end. Years after the disappearance of the writer, the manuscript was found in the dusty recesses of a forgotten library. The words on the page seemed to stare back at the discoverer, a cold, dead gaze that seemed to bore into their very soul. The title, The Echoes of Blackwood, seemed to whisper a haunting melody, drawing the reader in with an otherworldly allure. As the reader began to read the words, a chill ran down their spine. The story seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, drawing them deeper into the heart of the narrative. And then they stumbled upon a final page, one that had been hidden away, tucked between the lines of the main text. The words on this page were different, a cold, dead voice that seemed to sear itself into the reader's very soul. "It is not the end," the voice whispered. "The darkness is still out there, waiting for its next victim. And when it finds you, it will consume you whole, just as it consumed me." The reader felt a shiver run down their spine as they realized that the writer's fate was not unique. The darkness was still out there, waiting for its next victim. And as they closed the manuscript, they knew that they would never be able to escape the haunting echoes of Blackwood. The darkness seemed to close in around them, a suffocating shroud that seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. And as they looked around, they realized that they were not alone. The shadows on the walls seemed to move and twist like living things. And the air was thick with the stench of decay and corruption. The reader knew that they had to get out of there, to escape the clutches of the darkness. But as they turned to leave, they heard a faint whisper in their ear. The words on the page have seen to that. "You are now a part of the very story you had sought to read. And you will be trapped forever, a prisoner of your own horror." The reader felt a chill run down their spine as they realized that the darkness had already consumed them. And as they looked down at the manuscript, they saw that the words on the page had changed. The end now read the beginning. And as the darkness closed in, the reader knew that they were doomed. The words on the page had consumed them whole, and they were now a part of the very story they had sought to read. The echoes of Blackwood would haunt them forever, a constant reminder of the horror that lurked in the shadows, waiting for its next victim. Wow, I want to start by saying thank you. Thank you for watching, thank you for being a part of this journey, and thank you for allowing me to share this haunting tale with you. As we've delved into the depths of the echoes of Blackwood, I hope you felt the same chill run down your spine that I have. This story has been a wild ride, and I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to share it with all of you. But as the darkness closes in and the words on the page seem to shift, I want to remind you that the story doesn't have to end here. In fact, I believe that the true horror is only just beginning. As we've seen, the darkness is always waiting, lurking in the shadows, and searching for its next victim. That's why I want to invite you to join me on this journey, to become a part of the story itself. By subscribing to this channel, you'll gain access to even more terrifying tales, more haunting stories, and more opportunities to explore the depths of the human psyche. But be warned, once you've entered this world, there's no turning back. The darkness will consume you, and the words on the page will become a part of you. You'll be trapped forever, a prisoner of your own horror. So, if you're ready to take the leap, to enter the world of the echoes of Blackwood, and to become a part of the story itself, then hit that subscribe button now. Join me on this journey into the heart of darkness, and let's see where the words on the page will take us. And as a special thank you to all of my subscribers, I'll be releasing exclusive content, including bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes looks, and even a few surprises along the way. So, don't wait any longer. Hit that subscribe button now, and join the community of horror enthusiasts who are already a part of this journey. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, if you dare.